Have you ever wondered about the origins of our chalice and why we light ours each Sunday? We felt it would be good to briefly explore the chalice's origins before we light it this morning. There is a lot of fascinating information in the UUA pamphlet, The Flaming Chalice by Susan J. Ritchie. Most of what I will share this morning is taken from this pamphlet. We light the chalice because the flaming chalice is the symbol of our faith. It represents our identity, who we are. Lighting the chalice in worship signals the entry of our gathered community into a sacred space, and it connects us to the larger UU community throughout the world. Many people are surprised to learn that lighting a chalice as part of worship only found its way into UU congregations in the early 1980s. But the path it took to reach the sanctuary is a very UU one. A story that begins with Nazi resistors and ends with children in the religious education program. Originally, the flaming chalice was a two-dimensional image stamped on documents created by the Unitarian Service Committee, USC, to help Jewish refugees escape Nazi persecution on the eve of World War II. The belief was that such a logo would make their paperwork look more official. We aren't sure how the chalice as a 2D artistic rendering transformed itself into the 3D object used in worship. All evidence suggests that the path leads through our children's religious education programs. Curricula used in the late 70s stressed the meaning of the chalice and encouraged children to make chalices in different media. Eventually, those chalices morphed into objects that could be lit. The first documented uses of chalices in the main sanctuary are from Sundays, on which the children and youth led worship and demonstrated their practice to the adult congregation. How wonderful that a children's church craft captured the imagination of an entire denomination. Our chalice has a beautiful history and represents who we are.
And welcome to the second Sunday of Advent. The second Sunday of Advent focuses on peace. A light in the darkness, each candle lit brings one closer to the celebration of the light brought into the world by the birth of Jesus the Christ. This was the experience and belief of those using the Advent wreath as it was formally introduced in the mid-1800s in Germany. My experience of having a wreath with 4 candles on a dinner table marked a different season and time for our family. The Christmas decorations weren't put up yet because it was Advent. Maybe the week of joy, the pink candle, we got to start decorating. That's why we had the purple candles. It was like a tiny Lent. And during this time in our home, Mary and Joseph were walking around the house on their way to Bethlehem. So often prayers and songs would start the meal and the lighting of the candles. Of course, the kids fighting over who gets to light the candle and who gets to blow it out. It was a countdown to Christmas, gift giving, celebrating the birth of Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us, the ultimate gift. The prophecies in the Old Testament book of Isaiah, written 600 years before the Common Era, were read each week at Mass with the following themes: the hope that Yahweh would protect and save the people from the darkness in their lives. The second week, that peace would prevail that lions would lay down with the lamb, and that swords would be turned into plowshares. About a prophet who prepares the way for the coming of the Messiah. The third week of joy, we would hear about the blind being able to see, and the lame leaping like a stag, and those ransomed would be recovered. The joy of nearing the celebration of the Messiah's birth and the end times of salvation to come. The third week was joyful because it gave us more light. I appreciated the readings during Advent because they're very much tied to the social justice teachings in the Catholic Church. So the origin of the Advent wreath comes from solstice practices of worshiping the sun god during the dark time of winter, with candles in circles, using wheels with greenery and candles, and often crowns on people's heads. The missionaries picked up on this practice and this symbol being used in worship of the sun god, and they assimilated it into the Christian practices. So the Advent wreath is very symbolic. The evergreens used for the wreath itself are a reminder of continuous life. There's no beginning nor end to God or the love of Jesus. And the shaping of them in a circle reinforces that theme. The practice was further developed by Johann Heinrich Wickern in the 19th century to create the modern Advent wreath we know today. This practice was introduced to America by German immigrants, one being my grandmother, Pfaffenbach. So the materials of the wreath, as you see, the green twigs are a sign of life and hope. The fir trees, the cedar, the pines, a symbol of strength and immortality. Laurel is a symbol of victory over sin, persecution, and suffering. And holly is a recalling of the crown of thorns resting on the head of Christ. The Advent season is all about welcoming the light of Christ's return. And we begin in darkness, sitting and waiting with the desire for the coming Messiah. The 4 candles used, the 3 purple and the pink one, mark these Sundays. And they're a representation of the Christmas light approaching and bringing hope and peace, as well as a symbol of struggle against darkness. The flames, as they are progressively lit, give physical and spiritual light during the dark days of winter and bring hope for the coming Emmanuel. The candle of joy giving us more light, and the final week that a woman will bear a child and call him Emmanuel, God with us, the ultimate love. As we begin this time of quiet prayer, I invite you to find a comfortable way to sit in your chair. I encourage you to have your feet on the floor and your eyes closed if you're comfortable. Allow yourself to notice your breathing as you breathe normally in and out. In and out. And I invite you to prepare yourself to listen to what your God may be saying to you during this prayer. And as you sit there, you can use similar words of here I am, Lord God, Yahweh, here I am. Let us start a hike. Imagine You are climbing up the mountain of the Lord God. As you start, the path is wide with beautiful trees and hillsides. As you fill your lungs with the cool, clean air, as you continue, you notice the path is becoming narrow and steep. There seems to be more rocks sticking up from the ground, and you find yourself a little out of breath. As the air becomes thinner, the higher you climb. You see someone in the distance, and they're looking at you. It looks like their hand is waiting for you to come. Though you are alone, you are not afraid. In fact, you feel a pull, a desire to go to this person. As you're standing in front of them, you notice they're dressed in long robes that are moving gently in the mountain air. This man, he smiles at you and asks, "What are you seeking on this path?" What do you say to him? What are you seeking? And then he says to you, "I am the prophet Isaiah. This is the mountain of Yahweh. It is rich with life and dreams. What dreams do you bring to this place? What are the dreams you bring to this mountain? What are your dreams that you want to share with God?" Isaiah looks at you with eyes that know how to dream. And he says that my dreams beat swords into plowshares. They are dreams of peace, of life, of hope, and love. What are the swords in your heart that need to be changed? What are the swords that wound you and hold you back from dreaming and from climbing the mountain? You give those swords to Isaiah, the prophet, the dreamer, and you ask Isaiah to help you change them into something life-giving. Isaiah says that I will change your swords into plowshares so you can till the soil of your soul and know that God is with you. Are you ready for this dream to be real? You look into the eyes of this dreamer, Isaiah, and you say, "Yes, yes, I'm ready, Isaiah." Isaiah smiles at you and takes your hand. He looks at you with eyes filled deep with hope and life. He understands you. "Come," he says, "let us walk in the light of Emmanuel."
Selamat. Good morning. Today, I have the honor of sharing with you a celebration that arrives in the darkest night of the year, a festival of light known as Yalda Night, or Shabe Yalda. For many in the Western world, Yalda Night is unfamiliar. It's an ancient winter solstice celebration observed primarily in Iran, as well as by communities in Afghanistan, Tajikistan, and across the Persian cultural sphere. It marks the longest night of the year, the moment when darkness reaches its peak and the sun begins its return. Families gather to stay awake late, to share food, stories, poetry, and warmth. They eat pomegranates, the fruit of life that bears the seeds of creation, and watermelon, the summer fruit that will hopefully tide us through the cold winters. Both symbols, though, of the sun's eventual triumph, and they will recite verses from Hafez of Shiraz, whose poetry has guided generations through both hardship and celebration. It is, at its heart, a night that reassures people that even the deepest darkness eventually recedes, and that light, goodness, will always return to triumph. On Yalda, families often gather around a special table or a spread called a kursi, a low table draped with blankets and warmed from underneath, symbolizing the comfort and the closeness on the coldest night of the year. Platters of bright red fruits, nuts, and sweets are arranged to evoke warmth and vitality. Elders will tell old stories. Young people are going to try to stay awake till dawn. And many households perform Faleh Hafez, a tradition where a randomly selected poem by Hafez is read as a kind of spiritual reflection or a divination for the year ahead. These simple rituals, eating, storytelling, reading, staying awake together, they're all gestures of defying the darkness that has overtaken the season by filling it with connection and meaning. Now, it might not escape some of you that Assyrians, my people, were not on that list of communities I mentioned that traditionally celebrate this holiday. Yalda Night is not an Assyrian holiday. And so now you might be wondering, why is an Assyrian person up here rambling at a podium about Yalda Night to you? To answer that, I want to start with a single word, Yalda. The word Yalda is Syriac, my ancestral language. It means birth. The holiday's widely recognized name comes not from Persian, but from Syriac Christianity. It became associated with the winter solstice during late antiquity when ideas, beliefs, languages flowed across the region and influenced one another. The word Yalda has been used by Syriac-speaking Christians to refer to the birth of Christ. Meanwhile, Zoroastrians and other pre- and non-Islamic communities of Persia observed their own solstice traditions. Over centuries, millennia, these linguistic and cultural threads intertwined, and the Syriac word for birth became attached to a Persian celebration of the sun's rebirth. This shared etymology is more than a linguistic footnote in a textbook on a library shelf. It is a story about connection. And that is why I, an Assyrian, is standing here today to talk about a holiday that my people do not celebrate. Because the story of Yalda is not only a story about the solstice or about the sun or the turning of the seasons, it is also a story about how cultures influence and enrich one another, even across borders, even across histories marked by conflict. The ancient peoples of the Near East or Southwest Asia, Assyrians, Persians, Armenians, Arabs, Kurds, many others, surprisingly, maybe to some of you, have not always lived in peace. Empires have risen and fallen. Boundaries have shifted. Rivalries have formed. Blood feuds that have spanned generations tracked longer than entire nations. Yet at the very same time, our languages borrowed from one another. Our stories traveled across deserts and mountains, rivers and seas. Our customs blended, separated, and blended again. The word Yalda is a reminder that even in places where conflict has shaped history, exchange and connection were always happening quietly in the background. To me, the fact that a Persian holiday carries a Syriac name is profoundly meaningful. It means that our cultures have been shaping each other for millennia. It means that even in times of struggle, we have been in conversation. And today, when I speak about Yalda, I'm participating in that same long-running conversation. For an Assyrian person to share the meaning of Yalda Night in a Unitarian Universalist community in the United States is, in its own way, a continuation of what this holiday represents: the sharing of culture, the preserving of history, and the creation of unity across difference. Yalda is a celebration of light returning after a long period of darkness. And, as many of you know, birth is incredibly hard work. It's exhausting, it's painful, it's demanding. Yet it is also sacred, transformative, and rewarding in a way that little else in this world is. In the same way, the work of cultural connection, of keeping traditions alive, of choosing hope when darkness feels long, this too is labor. It asks something of us, yet it brings forward a new light. But its deeper light, the symbolic one, is the light that communities offer each other when they exchange stories, welcome one another's traditions, and honor the tapestry of human experience. When we share culture, especially with people who are unfamiliar with it, we keep history alive. We affirm the dignity of our ancestors, and we plant seeds of understanding that grow beyond borders, politics, old wounds. So while Yalda Night is not an Assyrian holiday, it does illuminate something essential to my experience as an Assyrian: the belief that cultures survive not by isolating themselves, but by remaining engaged with the world around them. Assyrians are a people who have carried an ancient language that you heard earlier today, just a moment ago, the language of Christ himself, across a millennia. Our survival has always depended on remembering who we are, yet also on forging bonds with those around us. This solstice, across Iran and the Persian-speaking world, families will stay awake into the late hours, eating red fruits, lighting candles, reading poetry, celebrating the sun's return. And although my people do not celebrate the holiday, the language of my ancestors are woven into its very name. This weaving of cultures, delicate, unexpected, and beautiful, is what brings me here today. As we honor festivals of light from many traditions this month, I invite you to hold Yalda's message close, that even when darkness is long, light is always on its way. And even when communities seem divided by their history, our stories are often more intertwined than we realize. And perhaps that is the truest meaning of Yalda, of birth. The birth of light, the birth of understanding, and the continual rebirth of connections between people. Thank you.
The Jewish Festival of Lights, Hannukah, is an 8-day celebration commemorating the rededication of the Second Temple in Jerusalem and the miracle of a single day's worth of oil burning for 8 days, celebrated by lighting the candles on a menorah nightly, playing dreidel, and eating oil-fried foods like latkes. It marks a victory of light over darkness and religious freedom. And here are some of the key aspects of Hannukah. The miracle. After the Maccabees recaptured the temple, they found only a small jar of pure oil, enough for 1 day, but it miraculously lasted for 8 days. The menorah, a special 9-branched candelabrum, 8 for the nights, and 1 helper candle called the shamas is lit, adding 1 candle each night. And there are traditions. Families play with a 4-sided spinning top called a dreidel. They sing songs, they pray, and they eat foods fried in oil, such as fried jelly donuts and potato pancakes, latkes. I wish I had some now because they're so good. The meaning Hannukah means dedication, and the holiday celebrates spiritual perseverance and the triumph of light, freedom, and Jewish identity. Why Festival of Lights? The name highlights the central act of lighting candles to remember the temple's miraculous menorah, symbolizing the enduring light of Judaism and the miracle of the oil. This poem that I'm going to read is called The Miracle by Philip M. Raskin. It was written many decades ago, and it is revered by many Jewish people. The rabbi tells his old tale, the pupils seated round. And thus, my boys, no holy oil in the temple could be found. The heathens left no oil to light the Lord's eternal lamp. At last, 1 jar, 1 single jar, was found with the high priest's stamp. Its oil could only last 1 day, but God hath wondrous ways. For lo, a miracle occurred. It burned for 8 whole days. The tale was ended, but the boys, all open-eyed and dumb, sat listening still as though aware of stranger things to come. Just wait, my boys, permit me, pray, the liberty to take. Your rabbi, may he pardon me, has made a slight mistake. Not 8 days, but 2,000 years that jar of oil did last. To quell its wondrous flames availed no storm, no flood, no blast. But this is not yet all, my boys. The miracle just starts. This flame is kindling light and hope in countless gloomy hearts. And in our long and starless night, lest we should go astray, its beacon, like sheds floods of light, and eastward points the way, where light will shine on Zion's hill, as in the days of old. The miracle is greater, boys, than what your rabbi told. Excuse me a second. So we're speaking about miracles, and we are all miracles, and I am a miracle. I am a miracle standing before you, and although I was not raised in the Jewish tradition, it is in my culture and ancestry. My parents fled Hitler's Nazis to escape the concentration camps that killed 6 of my relatives. My parents and grandparents lived in Vienna, Austria, and my mother watched from a balcony as the troops marched into the city. Very early on, my parents and grandparents planned carefully to leave Austria, and at great risk smuggled money and valuables out of the country. They decided to take their chances to reach a ship that would take them to England. And they decided that they would all take different routes because it would be better if one got caught than all 6. And on part of my mother's journey, she boarded a train. And as she approached the platform, she was walking down and looking in the different compartments. And she looked into one compartment, and there was just one young Jewish girl there, beautiful young girl, and she had the star on her coat, so my mother knew she was Jewish. And she wanted to go in and keep her company, but something told her to keep walking. And so she looked in the next compartment, and it was filled with tourists, because this was at a time when Germany and Austria were still trying to court England. And so she figured if she boarded that particular compartment, there would be less likelihood that the Nazis would board and search for Jewish people. And so she took a window seat, waiting for the train to start, and as she looked out the window, she saw this young woman being dragged away by Nazi soldiers. That would have been her fate. So the outcome of this was very good for my parents and grandparents. They met at the ship and boarded and safely got to their new home in England. And I'm the result of their successful journey, and I feel really grateful for that miracle, and I feel so blessed every day.